What's going on, my Central Unit? It's the Central Man here. So, the first time since the end of 2024, I'm going to review a WCW pay-per-view. Last month marks the 25th anniversary of a show I'm going to talk about right now. That is WCW's Bash of the Beach 2000, the final Bash of the Beach in WCW's history. So, this show was at the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, Florida. On the 9th of July 2000, the attendance of the show was 6,572. Bash at the Beach 2000 drew about 100,000 pay-per-view buys. Really good buy rate for this show. It's a bit of a drop-off than the previous year's Bash of the Beach. Bash of the Beach 1999 received about 175,000 pay-per-view buys. I think the main event of that show was, Kevin Nash versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. And also on that same show you had that Junkyard Invitational Brawl. That's another, that would be another future classic WCW show to review for another time. But anyway, here's the note. This show, Bash of the Beach 2000, was the second most bought pay-per-view of that year. That title's taken by Sold Out in January of the same year. That was known for Chris Benoit winning the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in his final match in the company before taking his radical buddies to the greener pastures of the World Wrestling Federation. So yeah, and also one final note: this is the last time this show received that 100 buy rate mark for the company, because after that will be the last time that a WCW pay-per-view will receive hitting that 100 buy rate mark, because after that, it'll go down below the 100s. They'll get 80 mark, 90 mark, 70 mark, 60 mark, wherever you name it, because this is the last time that this show hitting that 100 buy rate mark ever again, because the year 2000 was really the last full year for the company before they went under in 2001. So anyway, the commentators for Bash of the Beach 2000, we got Tony Schiavone, the Poor Man's Jerry Lawler, Mark Madden, and Scott Hudson. Like I said, this is the final Bash of the Beach in WCW's history. The next time we see a wrestling show doing a Bash of the Beach show was AEW, 20 years later. I'm guessing it was their special episode of Dynamite, because this is a year before they end up doing Rampage and Collision. So yeah, I think I don't know if they got the rights. I think WWE got the rights of WCW, but that's another story for another time. So like I said, the final Bash of the Beach in the company's history. This is known for, it's also known for the infamous World Title match between Jeff Jarrett and Hulk Hogan with Vince Russo. I'll get to more of that later on. That's number 2. And number 3, number 3, you had, spoiler alert, Booker T winning his first of 6 championship in his career. This show kind of cement Booker T into the main event as a main event player. I'll get to that match later on in this review. So yeah, so let's move on to the first match of Bash of the Beach 2000. So the first match to kick off Bash of the Beach 2000, this is for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. Lieutenant Loco, represent the Misfit in action, defending the belt against Juventud Guerrera, aka The Juice. I'll get to more of that shortly. Lieutenant Loco is basically Chavo Guerrero. I'm guessing that group is basically the answer to D-Generation X. It was led by, Bill DeMar, aka Hugh Morris, aka Hugh G. Retchen. You got, Lieutenant Stash, Private Stash. It's basically Lash LaRue. You got Major Guns. You got the introduced Sergeant AWOL, the Wall, and also you got Lieutenant Loco. and you know, Lieutenant Stage, Private Stage. Was it Corporate Cajun? That is Lash LaRue. Man, this is getting really confusing of their names because it's basically army puns. By the way, this is a continuation of their rivalry between the MIA and the Filthy Animals. I think this feud kind of continued during this massive factions rivalry between the New Blood and the Millionaires Club. I think at this moment in time, I don't think the announcers kind of bring up the two factions. You know, I think this rivalry is starting to end or already ended because it's basically a culture war at the time because the Millionaire Club is the old guard, the established guys, and you got the New Blood is basically the younger guys who've been held back by the older guys. But that's another story for another time. But yeah, I think that those factions end up falling apart. You know, like at this moment in time, DDP takes some time off. After this, Ric Flair took some time off. One guys end up leaving the company. More of that later on. Yeah, it was the beginning of the end of this faction warfare between the New Blood and the Millionaires Club. But anyway, so yeah, and this is still the continuation of the rivalry between MIA and the Filthy Animals. By the way, both factions were banned from ringside. You know, I'll get to one skit, and it's a shitty amount of skits. It was like authorized this rules by the Cat, and as the Cat Miller, the WCW commissioner at the time. Both the MIA and the Filthy Animals were bound for ringside. Yeah. Anyway, you had the Filthy Animals do their shtick. You know, like Conan doing his shtick. Disco Inferno at this moment in time is now part of the Filthy Animals. I don't understand why, because this is like a Hispanic Latino faction, even though he's not really Latino. I understand why, because Disco, Glenn Gilberti is now, he's friends with Conan. Yeah, he's just copying Conan's stick. At the end of it, you had Disco saying "Word to your mother." Not world, word to your mother. Anyway, and then we've got the Cruiserweight title match between Lieutenant Loco, I'm just going to call him Chavo Guerrero, and Juventud Guerrera, or otherwise if I keep calling Lieutenant Loco, that will be just confusing. Anyway, so the match between Chavo Guerrero and Juventud Guerrera, I'm not saying it was a bad match, but it was not a bad match. It wasn't great. The problem about this match in the opener, it was slow. The Cruiserweight division is kind of like a dead, damaged brand at this moment in time. And it was slow because Juvi is known for the high flying moves. Chavo, I don't think he does a lot of high fly. He's mostly a technical guy. I'm guessing during this time period, about that 1999-2000 mark in WCW, I'm guessing like one of the representatives of WCW telling the Cruiserweight guys to tone down their style, and I think that would be a bad mistake. I'm guessing at the time they were more focused on character development more than just guys that just can wrestle. Anyway, it was not really a bad match. It was just slow. It was bogged down with the two factions, the Misfit Action and the Filthy Animals. Yeah, the Filthy Animals came down the ramp wearing masks. You got the referees telling them to go back to the back, and then minutes later you got the MIA. They came from the crowd wearing masks. Bill DeMott, Hugh G. Ratchet, Hugh Morris, whatever you called him, wearing the Bill Clinton mask. Because at the time, Bill Clinton was the President of the United States of America, only until November, because he ended up losing it. I don't think he was competing in the race. He ended up because at the time in November, George Bush Jr. became President of the United States of America. Look it up. But anyway, they trying to distract. They came to the room trying to interfere, or came to the ring to interfere. Major Guns, her shtick, ripping her shirt, showing off her cleavage, her tits towards Juventud Guerrera. it wasn't really a bad match. You know, you had was it Hoovy? I think it was Hoovy or Chavo. One of them did like a running sit down powerbomb for the near fall, and then you know you had Chavo hit. Yeah, Chavo hit his I think it was a Michinoku driver, or was it Blue Thunder Powerbomb or Blue Thunder Bomb, or hit his version of the Hoovy driver near fall. Then Hoovy hit the Hoovy driver, and also he was doing. By the way, he was called the Juice. By the way, he hit the People's, his version of the People's Elbow. I'm gonna call it the Juice Elbow. Wow, like well, Hoovy, man, he was doing his shtick. You know, he's trying to copy The Rock. You know, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. You know, finally the Juice. You know, he's copy The Rock. And when you listen to The Rock's promos, he does like, finally The Rock has come back to what the place when the show is. I think Hoovy does it wrong, and he's doing, you know, the fucking People's Elbow. When you just do that, it just reminds the fans of the most established guy. You know, when Hoovy's doing the Rock's gimmick, it just reminds the people of Dwayne The Rock Johnson. The problem with Hoovy, man, he just doesn't have the personality, the charisma as Dwayne The Rock Johnson. You're just trying to mimic, like, you could say one of the most entertaining guys in wrestling, and soon to be the most entertaining guy in all entertainment. Anyway, so let's get back to this match. So Hoovy hit the Hoovy driver. You thought that was the finish, but instead Chavo reached his hand on the ropes in the last minute. In the end, Chavo hit the tornado DDT onto Hoovy to go. Try to get words out. Hit the tornado DDT onto Hoovy to win this match. I forgot to mention this. You know, Hoovy stole the physical cruiserweight title belt from Chavo Guerrero, and Chavo won this match. He retained the title and kept the physical belt. So yeah, I'm not saying it was a bad match. Wasn't shit, but it was just slow. And you got the two factions like the Filthy Animals and the MIA trying to came out with masks. I don't want to get into that, so not really a good way to kick off the pay-per-view. People call it a good match, but me, it wasn't bad. It was just very slow. It's very, it's kind of slow pace in my opinion, so let's move on to the next match. So the next match, this is for the WCW Hardcore Championship. Big Vito defending the belt against his mysterious opponent. Originally, it was supposed to be Big Vito versus Terry Funk. Then, on the Go Home Thunder, the final Thunder before this show, Big Vito attacked Terry Funk backstage, and Terry Funk is unable to compete in this match on this show. And the mysterious opponent is, Norman Smiley and Ralphus. Wow. Ralphus, you know, this is the guy who was Chris Jericho's bodyguard in 1998. 2 years later, he's doing whatever. I don't know. Because at this moment in time, Jericho is in this, physical rivalry with Chris Benoit. And also, he was also feuding with Triple H at that time. But I'm guessing, he's hanging around with other guys in the hardcore division, I think. But wow. I want to keep it short and simple, it's first off they will find you have to start you have to start backstage. Why they're doing intros? I don't get the fucking rules, man. Anyway, they're fighting backstage. You had Vito. By the way, there were got one note. Big Vito was originally they were supposed to be, he was the co-hardcore champion with his you could say kayfabe brother. Johnny the Bull, Johnny Stromboli, at one point, and then Big Vito beat Johnny the Bull not too long to become the solo hardcore champion, But anyway, so let's move on. Let's talk about this match because nothing much about talking about this match. So, but anyway, Ralph had some moments hitting Vito with the trash can. This hardcore division sucked. I don't want to get into that, But basically, you had Big Vito beat the crap out of Norman Smiley. Put him in the elevator. The elevator, we call it a lift in the UK. Anyway, he's out of this match. I'm trying to keep it short and simple. You basically had Yep, Vito beating the crap out of Ralphus. I think he put him through the table to win this match. And you thought like Norman Smiley came to the rescue, came for the A for Ralphus, but instead he didn't like came to the ring to brawl with Big Vito, and that was it. Stupid. Why they put this? I've got me thinking, if Terry Funk, I don't know if Terry Funk got concussed or this is for storyline purposes. Would it be a better match to have Big Vito versus Terry Funk? I don't know. I'll take that over, I don't know, this 2-1 handicap match between Big Vito versus Norman Smiley and Ralphus. The hardcore division in WCW was a joke. I think WWF's hardcore division is much way better than this. Because at this moment in time, they were doing the whole 24/7 rule. It was more fun. This was just train wreck after train wreck after train wreck. Why they're trying to beat WWF at the wrong game. I don't want to get into that. They've been doing it since Russo took over. In the autumn of 1999. Anyway, let's move on, man. Let's move on to the next match, and the next match is a weddings gown match. We got Daphne taking on Miss Hancock, aka Stacy Keibler. So basically, the rules of this match: you have to strip your opponent's wedding gown. So here's the backstory. So this revolves around between David Flair. So the whole bulk of 2000 of that year, David Flair, he's the son of Ric Flair. For the younger audiences. David Flair was in this trio, hang around with both Daphne and Crowbar, and then you could tell David Flair and Daphne, they're kind of like an on-screen couple, on-screen fiance, and then all suddenly David Flair cheated on Daphne for Miss Hancock, aka Stacy Keibler. I feel like in the video package, you had David kind of shove not Miss Hancock, Daphne to the ground. You can tell this is the end of this trio partnership between David Flair and Daphne and Crowbar. That's Devon Storm, by the way. Anyway, so Daphne with David Flair in her corner. Not Daphne. Miss Hancock. Sorry, Miss Hancock, Stacy Keibler. She was just wearing a traditional, normal wedding dress. And David Flair is dressing up like the groom. And then, and Miss Hancock's dressing up like the bride. And Daphne's wearing a black dress. It's a gothic wedding gown. And I understand why, because you can tell, she's gothic, it's match her character. This match is basically an angle disguised as a match. I don't want to get into it like the hardcore time match from earlier. They're not saying the wrestlers wrestle shit. There was no botches, they did hair mares. Stacy Keibler doing the handspring elbow. I'm gonna call her Stacy Keibler. I know she'll be called Stacy Keibler. This was after this whole failed pregnant storyline. I don't want to get into that. I think I said it in my review of New Blood Rising. But anyway, Miss Hancock did the handstand elbow onto Daphne, and then you got Crowbar and David Flair got involved. You had it's funny. Here's the funny part. You got the referee, that was Slick Johnson, got pants by Miss Hancock, and then Daphne Hancock pants David Flair, and then there was a hair clippers, hair razor, whatever you call them. Hair. I call it hair clippers. Yep. You had Miss Hancock grabbing the hair clippers, threatening to cut Daphne's hair. Out comes Crowbar. He pants himself. He was wearing trousers. We call it trousers, but he's wearing jeans. He's about to. I think it was Daphne and Crowbar was about to cut David Flair's. He's about to cut David Flair's hair. And then Miss Hancock grabbed the mic. He said, "I know what I know what you're thinking. What do you say? It's about I know you want to see Hit My Music. So basically, Miss Hancock, Stacy Keibler pants herself, remove her skirt portion of the wedding gown to basically fall for this match. So definitely won this match by default. Miss Hancock dance. I'm going back and forth calling her Stacy Keibler and Miss Hancock. The referee Slick Johnson's just sitting down on his lap, like watching Miss Hancock dance. Same as Crowbar. Suddenly, you got Daphne grabbing a piece of like the giant pieces of the wedding cake and rub it around Stacy Keibler, Miss Hancock's face, and then we got a massive cake fight, with the wedding cake. That was way better than the actual match. I don't really call it a match. So yeah, you can tell this was the beginning of the end. Yeah, like I said, it didn't went anywhere. They were doing this whole pregnant storyline. This was after New Blood Rising. Unfortunately, that was canned because they took off Stacy Keibler off television after that, and then they found out she was not pregnant, I don't want to get into that, it's a dumb storyline. Typical soap opera, Jerry Springer storyline. It's okay in Jerry Springer or a soap opera, but don't do it on a wrestling show, man. Come on, it's just like, let's move on, man. Let's move on to the next match. So the next match, this is for the WCW World Tag Team Championships. We got the perfect event. Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo, the future member of Billy and Chuck, defending the belt against Chronic. Chronic is Brian Clark and Brian Adams. So, by the way, Chronic were the WCW Tag Team Champions before the perfect event defeated Chronic. And also, forgot to mention this, during their run as Tag Team Champions, the perfect event, and basically they were during their run in the New Blood faction, the perfect events, they were doing one did the trying to impersonate Mr. Perfect, and one trying to impersonate Lex Luger. I think Chuck Palumbo was wearing Lex Luger's trunks. By the way, they were using the Lex Flexor. It's basically this bar. You basically flex your muscles. It's basically if you bodybuilders do. They flex their muscles before going on stage. They use that in their matches to win. Using it to win their matches. So the match between Chronic and the Perfect Event, I think it was a good match. It went a bit. It got a little boring, but it was a good match. I'm impressed off Chronic, man. Underrated, never got an opportunity. By the time they returned to the WWF in 2001, they had the bad match against The Undertaker and Kane. Another story for another time. But yeah, they're in good shape. They look jacked. I think they were basically the answer to the APA. If WCW never went out of business, would they be on the same path as the Steiners and the Holland Heat? We don't know. But anyway, so the perfect events, working on members of Chronic. I don't know which one's Brian Adams or Brian Clark. It's very confusing. They are the former Crush and Adam Bomb, and one of them used to be formerly known as Wrath. They did the perfect events hit. I think it hit one of the members of Chronic with the I think it was a diving elbow, not a diving elbow, a diving shoulder tackle off the top rope. Anyway, Chronic did the big power moves. I think the funny part. You had I don't know which one. Is it Brian Clark or Brian Adams? One of them picked up Sean Stasiak on his shoulders, picked him up on his shoulders, and threw him outside of the ring. One of them hit the F5. I don't know if it's Brian Adams or Brian Clark. One of them hit the F5 onto Chuck Palumbo. It just reminds people because this is 2 years before Brock Lesnar. And I think the last person did the F5. I think it was Matt Morgan. He did it on the Big Show. That was just when people refer of the F5, they'll just say Brock Lesnar. But seeing one of the members of Chronic doing it, I was like, God damn, I was godsmacked. Anyway, so both Chronic hit like both members of the Perfect Event with the high times. I'm guessing like it's a double choke slam. One of them trying to hit one of them with the Lex Flexor. Anyway, they hit the Chronic hit the Doomsday Powerbomb off the top rope to win this match and become the tag team champions. You know, it was a good way. It was a good match. You know, nothing special. You know, Chronic, you know, got the tag team titles once again. They holded the belt for 1 month before dropping the belt to the Dark Carnival. So let's move on to the next match. So the next match, we got Posituni Canyon. That's Chris Canyon taking on Booker T. So, you know, this is events of 2 months. So in May of 2000, you know, Chris Canyon got thrown off this cage. It's basically, I don't really call it this ultimate version of Hell in a Cell, and he kind of landed on the ramp, and fans got really, that was very poor in taste because Slamboree 2000, it was at the Kemper Arena, and that was the same arena that Owen Hart passed away, you know, had his tragic accident. So let's fast forward 1 month later at the Great American Bash. Canyon cost DDP his match against Mike Awesome in the ambulance match, and suddenly Canyon became Positively Canyon. He's basically personating Diamond Dallas Page because at this moment in time, DDP is taking time off, you know, because he got screwed. He got screwed. He got screwed by his wife Kimberly at Spring Stampede. David Arquette, you know, his like star from that film Ready to Rumble at Slamboree. That was the 2nd month, and then the 3rd month he got and then he got screwed by Canyon. Kimberly in April, David Arquette in May, and then Canyon in June. So anyway, and I think like he's marking DDP's autobiography, and I think he's using it to win matches with the loaded book, and the book has got the brick. Booker T is now Booker T because he had a rough part of the first half of the year 2000, feuding with his brother Stevie Ray over the rights of T, and then feuding with the New Holland Heat. Then he was just Booker. Then he was part of the Misfits in Action as G.I. Bro. Now he is just Booker T once again. This match was good. It was fast-paced stuff. I really like it, you know. Like one more of the match, you know, the brick kind of fell off the book, you know, the DDP's book, you know, and I'm guessing the book is now on the announce desk, you know. The Canyon, Canyon hit. I'm gonna do it in the correct order. I'm doing it in the running order, by the way. Canyon hit Booker T with the book. But that was a near fall because the brick is not inside of the book, you know. And the funny part, Canyon's like, checking the page. Where's the brick? Where's the brick? And anyway, he kind of like, I'm guessing like he kind of slammed. He kind of placed the still. I think he placed the still steps and whacked Booker T with the chair onto that still steps. I'm guessing on the knee of something. I don't know. This was outside of the ring. He hit Booker T with a. Was it a bottom rope suplex, and he hit like a Alabama Slam powerbomb. That was cool. That was good, but that was the near fall. So in the end, Jeff Jarrett came to the ring, hit Booker T with the guitar. Canyon hit the cannon cutter off the top rope, and Canyon won this match. So it's not the last time we see Booker T and Jeff Jarrett on the show. Jeff Jarrett's got his world title match against Hulk Hogan later soon. But besides that, it was a good match. I really liked it. It was really. It's really a shame for Canyon, man, because he ended up committing suicide. This was years after he admitted he was gay, and they missed a boat on Canyon. He's doing the DDP gimmick. It's a shame. It's a shame, man. I think he's underrated. I kind of like his Alabama sit down powerbomb. That was cool. But yeah, I don't think Booker. I don't think it hurt Booker at this long run. Yeah, he didn't win. This win didn't mean nothing for Kenyon because the next month at New Blood Rising, he ended up feuding with Buff Bagwell in the infamous Judy Bagwell on the pole match. So yeah, let's move on to the next match. So the next match we got this is for the WCW United States Championship. Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner with Medeja in his corner defend the WCW United States Championship against Mike Awesome. So Steiner won the United States title at Spring Stampede in the tournament. He won the United States title in the tournament at Spring Stampede. He's kind of in this feud with the commissioner, Ernest the Cat Miller. He kind of banned Steiner using the Steiner recliner. Here's the very confusing part. Steiner was part of the New Blood faction, and then all of a sudden he's now babyface. He's now jumped allegiances, and now he's part of the Millionaires Club. Very confusing. I don't want to get in details of it. So it's. I don't think people care about this New Blood Millionaires Club rivalry. Anyway, so Mike Awesome, he came from WCW as the ECW World Champion. At this moment in time, he's no longer the ECW World Champion. He ended up dropping the title to Taz because Taz was also no longer with ECW. He's no longer. Both guys were no longer contract with Extreme Championship Wrestling. You had a WCW guy versus the WWF guy on ECW, and then I think Taz ended up faking the title because he's no longer contract with ECW. But anyway, so he's the career ender. I'll get to more of his gimmicks soon, a little bit later on. But anyway, this match was good. Big brutes, both Mike Awesome and Scott Steiner. The fight in the crowd. Ernest the Cat Miller trying to interfere. One did the move up the top rope. I think that was Mike Awesome. I think Awesome used the bell. And by the way, like I said, Ernest the Cat Miller, grabbed the mic. Steiner was about to win this match, trying to lock in the Steiner recliner. And then you got the Cat telling Steiner to not use the submission hold because it was banned. It's self-proclaimed dangerous because if you watch a Scott Steiner match, the Steiner recliner is basically the camel clutch. But instead, Steiner ignores Ernest the Cat Miller because he doesn't care. He's Big Papa Pump. So Steiner locking the Steiner recliner onto Mike Awesome. Instead of basically it is a disqualification because he used the illegal move. It was illegal by the Cat. So yeah, he not just disqualified Scott Steiner, he stripped the United States title off. He took the title away from Scott Steiner. So at this moment in time, the United States title is held up. It's held up. And by the way, this is leading up to Lance Storm winning the United States title. This is about a week and a half late. I think it was about 2 weeks later on Nitro, because he came from ECW. That was kicked off Lance Storm's push in the mid card. He ended up winning not just the United States title, he ended up winning the Cruiserweight title, I think the Hardcore title, and giving it some Canadian theme name of those belts. It's planting the seeds of Lance Storm forming Team Canada, and it got me thinking, wow, they really did Mike Awesome dirty. Instead of Steiner putting the hold on, disqualified him, and now Ernest the Cat Miller strips the United States title away from Scott Steiner, and then Lance Storm won it 2 weeks later. Here's a foreign concept. Why did you just give the belt to Mike Awesome? No, it's just dumb logic, and it's fucking criminal for Mike Awesome. I checked his championship accomplishments in his Wikipedia page. The only title, anything he won in WCW was this Armageddon Battle Royal, I think later on in the year, but he's never won a single championship in World Championship Wrestling. Fucking criminal. Why could just have Why could have Mike Awesome? Why could just the Cat award the United States title to Mike Awesome? Yeah, this is fucking dumb. And this is really the beginning of the end of Mike Awesome, because later in the year he became the Fat Chick Thriller and that 70s guy. And I'll get to more of that later on, so. Besides that, it was a good match, but the ending was bullshit. And this was full of bullshit finishes, so. And this match, we're going to keep it short and simple, by the way. We got a graveyard match. Vampiro taking on the Demon Dale Torborg. This is a bit of a breather of Vampiro's feud with Sting. He's not on the show. This was after the Human Torch match at the Great American Bash, when Vampiro basically set fire, not just the real Sting, but the stunt double Sting off the what's it called? It's basically their version of the Titantron. And the announcer said, selling it like Steve Borden is dead. Fuck. But anyway, so now he's feuding with Vampiro. Not Vampiro. No. Vampiro's feuding with the Demon Dale Torborg. This is revolved around Asia. Asia is the real life wife of the Demon. Asia is basically the answer to China. And it's just like... No, I understand why the comparison is completely different, because China has dark hair. Christy Wolf, she's blonde. I'm referring her to her real name. They both got muscles, but the difference is Asia's short, China's tall. I mean, Midnight, who's part of Holland Heat, she's more of China. She's the black version of China than Asia. That's just me. But anyway, so yeah, Vampiro kidnapped. I'm guessing kidnapped Asia. I'm guessing Asia escaped. I don't think people would care about this match. You know, it was stupid. This rivalry, because they end up form this Dark Carnival. More of that shortly. This match sucked. This is similar to the Wedding Gowns match from earlier. It's basically a segment disguised as a match. Anyway, the fight in this graveyard, it's not really a graveyard, it's basically a swamp. I'm going to keep it short and simple. Asia's knocked down. Vampiro puts the Demon, Dale Torborg, in the casket. He set the casket on fire. You know, what he did to Sting, he's going to do with the Demon. Unfortunately, he miscued it because it was too dark. The torch misses the casket. He left the ring, and this is after the world title match. We'll get that world title match soon. He came back to the ring. What Kurt promo says, I finished Sting and the Demon. Then you got the Druids wearing Sting mask. You got the casket. You know, you thought that was the Demon, but instead we got Sting, Steve Borden. For whatever reason, he's wearing the Sting mask, beat down Vampiro, and there's still a continued rivalry between Sting and Vampiro. Wow, what the Mickey Mouse fuck is this? First of all, what's with the fucking Druids? And you could, like, what the fuck? I'm completely, mind blown for this, you know. Why are you comparing Sting and The Undertaker? Both are two different wrestlers. Just because both guys wearing black, they're completely different. You know, Sting's not known for doing the supernatural shit. What the fuck is that? With the Druids, with the Sting masses, it's just like, what the fuck? It's a waste of fucking time. I feel like this match should be cut. Why are you putting it on a pay-per-view at the time you're spending a lot of money? I don't want to go in a rant of this. I want to move on to the other matches, but and the graveyard match was just a waste of time. First time there was one camera. You know, if they'd done this right now with a good production, I'm not saying WCW production was bad, but they do it with one camera. If they did more with one camera, it might be a better match. But here's the nitpick about this: no one cared. There was just basically too dark. You can't see anything. It's just like waste of time of this rivalry between Dale Torborg, the Demon Dale Torborg, and Vampiro, because it makes no sense because they end up forming the Dark Carnival, and feuding with Sting. Added the Great Muta, and by the way, the Demon end up facing Sting at New Blood Rising. Wow, with fucking Sting, man, in the year 2000. This is the guy who fought Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Vader, Lex Luger, Bret Hart, former world champions, and then also he's facing Vampiro. He's kind of build, but I don't get this Vampiro thing. Yeah, he ended up forming Lucha Underground a decade later, but wow, I'm guessing they basically I'm predicting not predicting. I'm guessing they're trying to phase Sting out, even though he's been the homegrown WCW guy since 1987. They'll say, oh, he's old, even though Sting was only 41 years of age. So I don't want to get into that. Let's move on. So moving on to the next match. So the next match, we've got Shane Douglas taking on Buff Bagwell. Buff Bagwell. They were tag team champions. This was during the rivalry between the New Blood and the Millionaires Club. Suddenly, Bagwell got suspended. He got in an altercation with a backstage crew. I think he was saying some sexual slurs. What kind of slurs? So Bagwell got suspended. They dropped the tag team towels. And by the way, they end up feuding after Bagwell is no longer suspended. So a short match, short and simple. It wasn't a bad match. It was okay, but confusing booking. Tori Wilson, came to the ring, and he just slapped Shane Douglas, and then minutes later you thought, Bagwell and Tori, they're on the same page, and suddenly, Tori Wilson, low blows Buff Bagwell, and now I'm guessing she's now allied with Shane Douglas, the franchise. I'm trying to keep it short and simple. I think Bagwell kicked out of the Pittsburgh Plunge. That was the Fisherman Suplex, and then Douglas hit Bagwell with the some kind of jawbreaker for the win. I don't think it went anywhere. This thing never went anywhere because Bagwell ended up feuding with Canyon at New Blood Rising in the infamous Judy Bagwell in a forklift match. It was basically a pole match, but it's a forklift. If you want information, go watch my review of New Blood Rising. So, waste of time. Moving on. And by the way, I think Shane Douglas ended up feuding with Billy Kidman. Add New Blood Rising after that, and I think it led up to the Viagra on the pole match. I think it was on Nitro or Thunder. No continuation after that. So let's move on. Moving on to the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. This is memorable. Double J, Jeff Jarrett, defending the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Because you could tell you can call it Millionaires Club versus New Blood. Jarrett, I forgot before, this is a bit of a briefer, by the way. Earlier in the show, you had the Cat, Ernest Miller. I should have talked about it when I'm talking about the match between Scott Steiner and Mike Carson. Throughout the show, the Cat, he's doing his storyline with the young dragons, Cass, Yang is Jimmy Wan Yang, and Jeremy Noble. He's stalking the Cat, attacking the Cat, stupid storyline. There were a lot of segments. There's 2 segments on the show, or 3 segments actually. Waste of time. Why are you putting it on the pay-per-view? Nobody cares. I'm moving on. So anyway, Jarrett was. I feel. He's hanging around with fat opera singers, because he wants to end Hulk Hogan's career, So, by the way, Jeff Jarrett won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship at the final Spring Stampede show against Diamond Dallas Page. He ended up winning it and losing the world title in the expense of what, 2.5 months, something like that. You know, one of them to David Arquette. So anyway, so he wants to end Hulk Hogan's career. So anyway, Hogan came out wearing his Hollywood Hulk Hogan gear, you know, the black and white, you know, because before that he's just red and yellow Hulk Hogan, you know, because at this moment in time the NWO is no more. So yeah, it's funny. I guess pays homage because this is the same arena that Hogan turned on WCW, ditched the red and yellow, and became Hollywood Hulk Hogan to form the NWO, wearing the black and white. And forgot one note by this: this is the first wrestling pay-per-view I review ever. This is the first. There's two notes I'm gonna get out of my chest before we move on to this match. By the way, forgot to mention this. By the time this review is uploaded, Buff Bagwell, forgot to mention this. Just got his leg amputated. Hope he have a speedy recovery. Hope he continue a full life. I don't think he'll wrestle ever again, but I hope he have a full career. By the way, and also number 2, this is the first wrestling review I done. Anything Hogan related since Hulk Hogan passed away. Forgot to mention that. So anyway, Hogan that Hogan becoming Hollywood Hogan was a good homage. So because 4 years ago he's got booed when he formed the NWO. 4 years later he's now cheered. So anyway, so out comes Vince Russo, and then here's this match. So you have Jeff Jarrett, lay down in the ring. Russo is just raising the WCW World Heavyweight title belt, and then suddenly he throws the world title belt in the ring. Hogan cut the he grabs the mic, cuts the promo, says this is why this company's in the damn sheet because of bullshit like this. And then Hogan just places his foot on Jarrett's chest, 3 count, and you self-proclaimed Hogan won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Hogan left, and then minutes later, when Vampiro was about to leave the ring, and that was the last time we see Hulk Hogan in WCW. And then minutes later, out comes Vince Russo. He's wearing a Barry Bonds t-shirt. I think it was a baseball jersey, Barry Bond. Because it's funny, I think he was the I don't know what baseball team he was playing at the time. Is it the? I think it's something. It's not the. It says Giants. I don't know. I'm not really a baseball fan, so I'm guessing he's trying to get some heat because this show's in Florida. Anyway, so he's wearing a Barry Bond jersey, and you got I think what Scott Hudson says. This is not Vince Russo, the character, but Vince Russo, the boss. Yep, this is Vince Russo cut his infamous work shoot promo. He said, "For day one, I'll deal with the bullshit. For day one, I have to deal with the bullshit, bullshit politics. I'm here for the Booker T's, the Jeff Jarrett's, the MIA. The one person that doesn't give a shit is that goddamn politician Hulk Hogan. You're not going to see that piece of shit again." He called the WCW World title the Hulk Hogan Memorial title. That title don't mean shit. But I'm getting to the key points of Russo's promo. Hogan played his creative control card. He said, Jeff Jarrett is still the WCW World Champion. He announced that he's going to defend the World Heavyweight Championship against Booker T. And he ends this promo, says, "Hogan, you big bald son of a bitch, kiss my ass." And that was it. I don't want to get any more in detail of this, so yeah. The one you see between Hulk Hogan and Jeff Jarrett was Bischoff's idea, because Russo's idea, this is a back and forth between Vince Russo and Hogan and Bischoff. Brad Siegel, who is by the way, you can watch this on Dark Side of the Ring, but this is the commentary version of it. So Brad Siegel is the president of WCW. He was the tiebreaker. It's basically who said. So Russo's idea for day one for this show, booking this show, having Booker T winning, main eventing, and winning the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. That was Russo's pitch. But they're going towards Bischoff's idea. So Bischoff's idea is Hogan, like I said, Hogan beat Jarrett with this finish. You know, him basically placing his foot on Jarrett's chest, win the WCW World Title. He ended up leaving for a bit. You know, go off on television for months. Do this long build. You know, they'll do this tournament to crown a new WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Hogan will come back months later at Halloween Havoc to challenge the winner of that World Heavyweight Championship. That World Heavyweight Championship tournament. And I'm guessing we're not going to get the real truth. I'm guessing they'll do this fight for the Undisputed World Championship, probably at Starrcade, I think. But yeah, that was Bischoff's idea. So Hogan and Bischoff didn't know that Vince Russo cut that infamous promo. You know, because Hogan and Bischoff, they're on the flight, they end up going back to Tampa. This show's in Daytona. So yeah, you know, basically Russo cut that promo to shock both Hogan and Bischoff. In Russo's mind, you thought Hogan and Bischoff know the promo, but they actually don't. And also, I think Russo said in interviews that WCW can't afford to re-sign Hulk Hogan. I don't know that's true, because I think at this moment in time they're hemorrhaging money. But you know, don't want to get into that. Look it up. So yeah, it's basically a he say thing. And yeah, it was Hogan's last appearance in WCW. You know, Russo basically fired him. This promo kind of backfired for Vince Russo, and this thing was set out of court. This is in 2003 when Hulk Hogan really suing Vince Russo in WCW for defamation of character. And yeah, like, I don't want to get into that, you know, because a lot of people covered it over the years. You're not going to find out the truth, similar to the events of Montreal, you know, at Survivor Series 97, or you're not going to find the truth, mate. It's the real truth lies in the middle, and we're not going to get that. So, you know, I don't want to get, you know. By the way, I'm not going to put this Russo promo in the overall rating of it. You know, to be frankly, it doesn't do nothing for me. So yeah, I think this is backfire for Vince Russo. You know, like, it's funny that, you know, this show, Bash at the Beach, you know, Hogan's first pay-per-view match for WCW was at Bash at the Beach, and his last match, basically his last WCW pay-per-view match would be at, you guess it, Bash of the Beach. You know, wow. You know, that's his swan song. You know, Hogan ended up like wrestling with the XWF in 2001 until making his triumph return to the World Wrestling Federation, forming the NWO, and facing The Rock at WrestleMania 18. So yeah, let's move on to the final match. Or not the final match, the final two matches on the show. So the next match we got Goldberg taking on Kevin Nash, and this is for Scott Hall's WCW contract. So anyway, so Goldberg turned heel on Kevin Nash during Kevin Nash's match against Jeff Jarrett for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship at the Great American Bash the previous month. I said in my review of the Great American Bash like 5 years ago, that I think turning Goldberg turning Goldberg heel is one of the biggest nail in WCW's coffin, because Goldberg said in interviews that he wants to become the superhero for the kids. So anyway, so I think, like, I watched this is years ago. It was on Nitro. You had Kevin Nash being down, Goldberg being down Kevin Nash. You got his son, Russo grabbing Kevin Nash's son and making watching, got beamed down by Goldberg. Anyway, so the stake is up. Goldberg. I think it was Goldberg challenged Kevin Nash to a match at Bash at the Beach, and the stake is that this is for WCW. WCW. This is for Scott Hall's WCW contract. It's on the line. So basically, here's the stipulation of this match. So if Kevin Nash's win, Scott Hall is, he'll be allowed back in WCW. If Goldberg win, Scott Hall is finito. That's in kayfabe. But in reality, Scott Hall is no longer with WCW. So Scott Hall, his last appearance in WCW, his last pay-per-view appearance was at Super Brawl in February, because at the time Scott Hall has personal demons, and also he was in a relationship with the niece of the president, Brad Siegel. Of WCW, not the president of the United States. I'm gonna say it again. So Scott Hall was in this relationship with the PA. I'm guessing the niece. He got in a relationship with the niece of WCW President Brad Siegel, because I don't know what's her name. She is a PA. I don't know, is a personal assistant. I'm guessing she's the audio assistant. I don't know. She's the niece of WCW President Brad Siegel. So, and then in March, WCW tour around Europe. I'm guessing they tour in Germany. Scott Hall kind of bump into her, to his ex-girlfriend or wife, I don't know, because I said it in my review of Super Brawl about 2 years ago. Hall bump into his ex-girlfriend. Brad Siegel's niece saw Hall talking to his ex-girlfriend or wife. So the news brought back to Brad Siegel, and Scott Hall is now in the doghouse. He's blackballed. Let's be honest, he's fired. He's fired from WCW. You won't see Scott Hall in WCW ever again in real life. He ended up going to ECW, not making a televised event in ECW. I think he made some house shows. And you won't see Scott Hall in a mainstream wrestling again, anything mainstream wrestling event ever again until the NWO reunion in WWF in 2002. But anyway, so nothing much talk about this match. I cover Goldberg, Kevin Nash matches in the past. I covered their match at Starrcade 98, Spring Stampede 99. But this is just nothing much to talk about, And this is Goldberg's first pay-per-view match as a heel, and his only pay-per-view match as a heel, by the way. Out comes Scott Steiner with Medeja. I'm guessing he's rooting for Kevin Nash, because they're both members of the NWO, or the black and silver version of the NWO, and the Ultra Group version of the NWO. This was after the Finger Poke of Doom, and also they were part of the Black and White as well. Steiner's there to root his former fellow and former NWO member, but instead swerved. Scott Steiner low blow Kevin Nash when he's trying to hit Goldberg with the Jackknife Powerbomb. Goldberg hit the spear, then the jackhammer for the win. Scott Hall is finito, and Goldberg's ripping up Scott Hall's WCW contract. And that was it. So I don't really care about this match. Let's move on to the main event. So the main event this is the real main event, and this is for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Jeff Jarrett is now he's still the world champion, because I'm guessing, you can check the Wikipedia page. Hogan's world title reign was null and void because during Vince Russo's work shoot promo. So anyway, Jeff Jarrett defended the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against Booker T. I got a match of the night as far. Kind of keep it short and simple. Fighting in the crowd. Jarrett hit the pile driver onto Booker T on the announce desk. There was Jarrett hit the stroke. People compare Jeff Jarrett to the one person I compare Jeff Jarrett to is The Miz. But I think Miz kind of earned his stripes. That's another story for another time. I think with Jarrett, Because at this moment in time, Jarrett is a 4-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion. I don't think he earned his stripe. Yeah, they gave him this push, but I feel like he kind of, that's another story another time. Yeah, like, they did what WWF failed to do, pushing him. But I don't think he has the job to be a main eventer. I felt like he's just a mid-carder holding the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, Like, even though, he's been United States, since then, he's been United States Champion, he's been World Champion, I get it, but he just doesn't have the chops. And that will continue on in his run in TNA. With The Miz, he's similar to Jarrett, he's just a mid-carder holding the WWE Champion. But, I think Miz kind of earned his stripes, he wasn't, I know, his second run as WWE Champion was a dud, but his first run was underrated, despite of that match against John Cena at WrestleMania 27. That's another story, another time. Go watch my review of WrestleMania 27. So I think Miz kind of earned his stripe. Jarrett was super pushed, because the only reason why he's pushed because he's Vince Russo's best friend, because they end up working together. They worked together in WWF, in WCW, and then years later in TNA. So anyway, so. And it's funny, like, I forgot to mention this, in that, when I talk about the infamous Vince Russo's shoot promo on Hogan, it's funny they worked together, Hogan and Russo worked together 10 years later in TNA, so that's never, I don't want to talk about it, so I forgot to mention that. So, anyway, so let's get back to this match between Booker T and Jeff Jarrett for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. So, fighting in the crowd, Jarrett power drive Booker T on the on the announce desk, and then we got Jarrett hit the stroke on the referee. He's going to hit Booker T with the guitar, the same guitar it cost Booker's match against Canyon earlier in the show, but instead, I'm guessing he dodged it. Booker T hit the bookend onto Jeff Jarrett to win this match. Yep, Booker T is now the WCW World Heavyweight Champion for the first time. This is the first of 6 world titles he's going to win, because he won 5 in WCW. His last one in WCW was on the final Nitro, and then years later in WWE he ended up beating Rey Mysterio at the Great American Bash in 2006. So I think Russo did a good thing. He's pushing Jarrett, even though I think Jarrett's push was a bit forced. With Booker T, I think Booker T was a bit organic, because Booker T's been in the company in WCW for 7 years, ever since he's teaming up with his brother Stevie Ray with Holland Heat. I think they were starting to push Booker T like earlier than 2000, because Booker T broke away from Stevie Ray in 1998. He went like through the card. He was a tag team guy. He was in the TV title picture. I think the one thing kind of really truly put him on the map in the singles realm was his match series with Chris Benoit. Then he was United States Champion with Scott Steiner. Then now he's the World Champion, and I think it was the right call to put the belt on Booker T, because he's done it. He's been tag team champions. I think it was about 8 times. He's been TV champion multiple times, United States Champion. He's going to win more world titles until WCW went under in 2001. And I think they continue their rivalry with Jarrett, leading up to New Blood Rising, when Jarrett attacked Booker T's wife, not Charmel, but his first wife. And I think. So, my overall rating of WCW's Bash of the Beach 2000, the final Bash of the Beach under the WCW banner, I'm gonna give it probably a 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10. Like, this show is bad, but it's not on the same level like, I don't know, Great American Bash 2000 or New Blood Rising 2000. I covered it in the past, but it was still a bad show. At one point before I carry on, this is one of the last videos I'm doing this old format of the overall rating format because I'm gonna change it up. You know, that'll be a future video for another time. But anyway, so the good, middle, bad. But anyway, so the good I kind of enjoy. I like Booker T versus Canyon, Booker T versus Jarrett. You know, when Booker T won the world title on the show. Scott Steiner versus Mike Awesome for the United States title. I kind of like most of it, but the ending kind of like dragged it down. And I kind of like the tag team title match. You know, Perfect Offense versus Chronic. The only thing I put in the middle is the opener, the Cruiserweight title match. You know, between Chavo Guerrero versus Juventud Guerrera. But man, this show sucked. And by the way, I'm not going to put Vince Russo's promo in the bad, middle, or good. To be frankly, it didn't do nothing for me. You know, by the way, I'm watching this. This is 2025. This is not the year 2000. But it kind of backfired. You know. But man, there were a lot of like bad matches. Basically, like segments disguised as matches. Great example: the wedding gown match, the graveyard match. Jarrett, Hogan versus Jarrett, or Jarrett versus Hogan for the WCW World Title. They were just basically just segments disguised as matches. You know, I don't like the hardcore title match. Bagwell versus Shane Douglas. You know, almost putting it in the middle, but I'm going to put it in the bad because of these. Just with Tori Wilson, kind of hurt it. You know, Goldberg versus Kevin Nash, you know, it's just Scott Steiner turning heel. You thought that, this is leading up to Goldberg and Steiner teaming up. On paper, it could be a good idea, but no. Goldberg ended up turning babyface, and it's just setting up that infamous triple threat match at New Blood Rising. But man, this show is just like, you can tell this is probably a bad time for WCW at this moment in time because they're getting their ass kicked by the WWF in the Reigns War. Like, just too many. And on the show, a lot of bullshit finish, a lot of swerve, heel turns, makes no sense. And I feel like, you get Booker T's in the main event slot. But I feel like Hogan's now gone, Flair, I think he got injured his shoulder. DDP's took some time off, Goldberg ended up soon coming back as a babyface, but I think, I'm like, man, I don't want to get in details, I'm going to end it, man, so, it's not a great show, it's not a good show, it's not a bad show, this show is just a wild show to watch. Anyway, I'm going to change the score of this pay-per-view. And I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 10. Like I said, this was a wild show to watch. So, what's your thoughts on WCW's Bash at the Beach 2000? Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below, smash that button, click the like, click the bell, subscribe to the Central Man Network on YouTube, be part of the Central Unit for more wrestling videos and more. And this is the Central Man.